Marx out of your way too. Building in Girard, Pennsylvania on Hathaway Street, where everything from Joy Line to Great American Railroads was made. The original factory was buried in the middle of the complex, and they just added onto it over and over through the years. And these cabinets are pre-production samples. Some of them are hand-painted and hand-lettered. Some of them are production items that they cobbled up and modified in some way. The Santa Fe diesel fuel tender is sort of a nightmare. The fact that somebody thought they could actually make it with handrails on is kind of funny. You're moving over to the Bud car there. Bud car has hand lettering on when they were working out what it was going to look like. And then the next Bud car shows a production floor. They tooled up to make a dummy unit, but the Bud car's sales were so poor that we never got that. This next shelf is fascinating. Marx tooled up and made all of the body dies to produce a line of lightweight plastic and medium plastic passenger cars. They were never produced. The Seaboard diesel is completely handmade, a piece of plastic at a time, also never produced. But it's surprising that they went to all the expense to tool a coach and an observation car and with the inserts for the side frames and without, and never produced them. The floors were not stamped out of production. The project was killed before the floor tooling was made. On the Santa Fe wide body tender, they had molded in the handrail there. They must not have done it to the original mold, because the one we see from Murray Klein today does not have the molded in handrail. The next one looks like a Lionel tender, but in fact it's all made out of Marx parts and was trying to be competitive. The Sound of Power unit is very interesting. Sakai made trains in the 1940s, and the Marx Sound of Power unit is labeled made in Korea, but here we see that it actually came from Sakai. The cabooses, we've got a lighted nickel plate caboose, and we have another one that the guy swings out when the car hits an uncoupling ramp. The one with the man, there's a little hole in the side of the car, the light bulb shines on his lantern.
You made these early stuff.
We're now getting into a whole series of deluxe plastic cars. Many of them are paint ideas on regular production car bodies. The next one, which you're coming up on, and let me open the cabinet to get that. It's different on each side. The louvers are all handmade. The entire body's handmade. It's really a shame that they never produced it. The yellow one in the back is considerably older. And then the other items on this shelf are pre-production on paint schemes on production bodies. This car, when their track trip was up, the man would pop out. This other car has a gadget that opens the door, so men come out both sides when the lever on the end is pushed. At least one of the tool makers wanted to make some covered hoppers. He kept submitting samples for covered hoppers and never got it approved. The tank car, the first one, is completely handmade, pre-production. It's not a production body, it's a handmade body. And the nitroglycerin car, that is the hardest thing to assemble. It's designed to explode, it comes in pieces, and boy, you can't get that to go back together again. Ideas put together for the rocket car, the rocket fuel car would have been pretty neat. There you have the first Seaboard double-door boxcar. The Seaboard car is very interesting. Seaboard Airline Railroad, that converted a bunch of regular 40-foot boxcars into wide-side lumber cars, and they paid for the tooling for Marx to make the car. That's why the only road name that ever appeared on that car when Marx made it was Seaboard. The Western Pacific car has a large feather on one side. It's painted with a small feather on the other. The cattle car is a completely different body from anything we've seen. It's lighted, uses a revolving searchlight car drum to turn the cow, which walks through the car. And the cars at the end are different labeling on production items. The basic car, and then they had a roof for it. They had a couple trailers. We didn't get those. Your they're moving over. They were thinking of doing roadbed for the wide radius track. I wish they'd made it, but they never did. The side dump car was a first attempt at an operating car. It has a solenoid underneath that, when operated, will tip the car body. And the crossing gate, it's got a crossing gate. It's got a solenoid to operate a stop sign to come up. It's got red and green lights on the house. It did everything when the train went by. Here was their first attempt at an old-fashioned locomotive. They were thinking of it as early as 1950. The William Crookes is actually the late version with the short smokestack, but they were trying some new decoration. Tender, again, is completely hand-labeled. And then you get into the handmade freight cars. Now, the way they made those cars, they painted them white, they painted them black, they painted them yellow, and then they scribed through the yellow paint in order to get the black and yellow and down to the appropriate depth to get the color and the shading. Shelf is different kinds of trucks and couplers. You see here you have the metal coupler notch to accept the tab and slot. They ultimately did that on the plastic ones. This is an early plastic coupler. Here we have a set of side frames proposal. This one appears to be coming apart. We'll put it back together. Different side frames for the small wheels. Here we have a knuckle coupler, which works just wonderfully, but again, it has too many pieces in it to have made it into production. There's an attempt at an automatic coupler for the 6-inch cars, but you had to uncouple it by hand. This is the very first plastic coupler. And then at the very end, we had some needle point trucks that rode into plastic side frames. They roll so easily compared to the regular production stuff. It's amazing. Items. This was their first attempt at a switcher. They didn't make it. The switcher body is all die cast. That car is a production box car without the door punched out, which was then completely hand painted. The Allan flat car and the Milwaukee gondola are completely hand painted and hand constructed cars. The Pennsylvania girder car is a production car, but the girders are made by hand and the cardboard piece to hold them apart. And then you have two different work caboose plans. Again, the cars are completely handmade, although the Marline's work caboose uses a lot of the parts off the scale series caboose body. Different crane cars were proposed and produced. The earliest one on the left here is from 1939. Different proposals through the years go across. The last one was 1946. Some of them are lighted, some of them just have hooks. Then they changed the boom style. It's interesting, this boom style is completely made out of sheet tin, but it looks like the plastic boom that Marx put on the records for years. You have a steam shovel bucket type car. And then the car with the clamshell bucket has a complex gearing back in the body shell so that as you crank it up and down, the clamshell opens and closes at the appropriate time. The last car has two clips on the side and a push button on the top, I suspect for a remote searchlight, but that was not with the model. This one, the sign sort of tells it all on the Timken roller freight car. That looks like a scale series car, but it is larger in every dimension, so the car itself is completely handmade. The American car and foundry car is the same size in terms of height and width as a scale series car, but dramatically shortened. The linseed oil car the prototype was not made in Girard, it was made in New York. It was sent to Girard as a suggestion. The suggestion was not taken. The B&O car in the back has a hammered out coal or gravel load that's painted and then sprinkled with sand and painted again. The car itself is unique. It looks like a production car, but it has a yellow floor inside and out and a red interior, which I've never seen before. Chesapeake and Ohio tender is a early model in 1948. The plastic is warping and collapsing, but it was a pretty neat looking tender. The Hollandale station is a hand-painted proposal for the HO gauge battery whistling station. The one they made is actually a little different from that. steeple cap switcher, and the way it was made was to take a Marx large plastic diesel switcher and cut the body up. They used cut-out body pieces along with other flat pieces of plastic in order to construct a proposed model. Switcher, here you see 3 different proposed paint schemes. These are all hand-painted, but these bodies are very unique in that the steps are punched all the way through. The production ones do not have steps all the way through, at least not that I've seen in the past. So maybe it's a little like the 999 where the cowcatcher was originally slotted and filled in because it was too fragile. They had proposed a metal steeple cab locomotive, sharp-looking little 4-wheel cabin slot coupler thing, never produced. And then rough model of the 4-wheel steeple cab, and then a painted version of the same thing to show what it would actually look like. This is probably the first one that was made. This is the second to do again, which they never finished. Oil derricks are very interesting. This one is based on the Marx water tower, and was produced in 1950, and that's about the time that Kolber came out, so Marx was seeing if they could compete with Kolber. The next model is from 1955, and that is the Kolber tooling. Marx ended up with all of the dies from the Kolber parts. Now, the only Kolber item that they actually produced was the plastic girder bridge, which started out as a Kolber item and is today manufactured by Murray Klein as a K-line item. This next item, I don't know what it is, but I think it's a remote Morse code clicking and signaling tower. Inside the little house is a complete clicker assembly, and I haven't tried to work it yet, but I suspect you get a fair amount of racket and light when you push the button. The 1953 station. This is mostly, if not 100% hand painted. I've had a hard time actually telling, but the inside of the body at the bottom contains a whistle cut out of the bottom of a regular Girard whistling station. This first thing is an old Lionel Scout locomotive body put on a Marx wind-up motor, and the 999 stickers on it upside down, a couple 333 pilot lights stuck in the front. Looks like the very beginnings of what was going to be the number 400 plastic steam engine, and this is dated December of 1948. Next item is the very first Marx number 198, the cheapest locomotive they made. The body's sort of exploding. It's all put together by hand out of individual pieces. And I don't know if it'll show on the camera, but we got a 994 long locomotive with an engineer and a fireman's seat and a detailed back cab. The Erie tender here is the prototype for the long locomotive. You can actually see that the wheels are cut out of the 6-inch car bodies and soldered into place. This next piece, I think, is the most beautiful piece of artwork that came out of the archives. Every brick on there is hand painted. Every bit of shading in the windows is hand painted. If you touch it, the paint comes off. It's absolutely gorgeous. This was a Glendale item. The large flat buildings were not made in Girard. They were made in Glendale, West Virginia. And I think this would have been a beautiful accessory. It has a notch in the base for a track to go through. You could have run the boxcars right into the factory. I was thinking of doing an aero train, and they used the M10005 cars, produced some, probably on the assembly line, and skipped the step of punching out the windows. They then hammered in the depressions for the General Motors bus-style windows by hand. They made 2 different prototypes, one with a locomotive based on the metal M10005, and the other one a completely scratch-built, piece at a time, large plastic locomotive. It had a large plastic diesel motor inside of it. That would wheel items. This is the very first idea for the 4-wheel plastic freight car. It's ugly, it's dirty, it's warping but it's the very beginning of the cheap plastic line. This is a proposal for a four-wheel plastic refrigerator car. Again, it's all handmade, the plastic's warping. They did not produce it. All of the 6-inch four-wheel items on this shelf are hand-painted items, for most of which went into production. The New York Central caboose, the very first of thousands or maybe even millions of them. Most of these cars are painted only on one side. The Seaboard caboose, again, they only finished the painting on the one side.
Are you going to finish up the wiring?
And basically the hand-painted bodies served as guides for those who made the litho plates. Making a new toy by changing the colors on the toy that was there. We all know that the 6-inch four-wheel boxcars come in a multitude of different colors. For some reason, somebody decided to try that on the Monons, and I can't imagine the cost and the difficulty associated with producing these. They had to take the original litho plates, they had to ink each of them separately, stamp the metal out, clean it, put another color on, do it again for each of the colors, and then process these things by hand through the assembly line process. We ended up with a complete rainbow of locomotives, and none of them were ever produced except in the standard colors that we're used to seeing in the Monon engines. Of 7-inch cars, both 8-wheel and 4-wheel. Again, the cars are all hand-painted pre-production prototypes. The Santa Fe tender you saw, or caboose you saw first, they made. The others they didn't. The Seaboard caboose, which we just went past. We have to remember that these items were to be used for ongoing work. They weren't meant to be saved. They weren't meant to be an archival history. They needed a cupola for something else. That car had gone into production. They didn't need it anymore. They ripped the cupola off. The hopper cars, you see there was a proposal for a 7-inch hopper car. And then this dummy B unit for the MKT line is a companion to a car that was, to a diesel that was shown in some of the early catalogs, but was never produced. The bottom shelf, we start out with a floor toy, a 994 locomotive with a friction drive rubber tired locomotive. It goes great on the floor. Then we get into a whole series of very large O-gauge cars, and 4-wheel cars on the passenger cars and 8-wheel cars on the 2 freight cars. These 8-wheel freight cars would have looked just great beside the number 21 large metal diesel. This 994 prototype is very unusual because it had both a sparkler and a bell, and if you think about the regular Marx motor, the sparkler doesn't line up at all with the smokestack opening on the 994 locomotive. So in order to make one, they had to make a totally new frame for the motor. The frame is completely different, but the internal parts are right off the production line. The City of Los Angeles, you see here, is made out of modified body parts from the M10005 locomotive, including a dummy B unit. The painting is unique. It's all 100% hand painted, and a lot of the body parts hand hammered out of sheet metal. The M10005 we see here is a hand painted version of a different color. This next piece is a whistle. It has a bellows. Here, we'll take a break here for a second. This item is supposed to whistle. I'm sure you probably, it wasn't very loud. The Century locomotive was again a pre-production prototype. It was in terrible condition. Had been in the factory and had water dripped on it in the place where it was stored. Bad shape, but it's pretty unique. The very first idea for a cattle car was slotted sides. The sides were cut out by hand out of a boxcar. We then have a tender with a backup light. You change the bulb by taking a screw out of the deck and going through the top. The next item here is a Commodore Vanderbilt, completely hammered out of sheet metal. It looks like the Lionel locomotive. It has the provisions for the battery that Marx was famous for with the screw on the side, but there's no Lionel parts in there. It's all made by hand. Next item, I think we have the very first M10,000 prototype here. And, you know, all the different colors that came in, they couldn't even decide in the very first prototype what color to make it. So it's not surprising we got so many different colors in the production item. It's unique in having an articulated locomotive to get the large, long engine around the 027 curves. Well, hand-painted Canadian Pacific locomotives. The 3000 looks a lot like a production engine, but the sideboards are all hand-painted, and the side rods are very different. You've got an extra bar on the main rod between the front and the rear drivers on that locomotive. The 397 has just got hand-painted sides on it. The next three locomotives show the development of an improved side rod for the 490. The first one looks like two of the regular Marx 999 or 1829 side rods riveted together. Then the next one was a little bit one-piece version, improved a little bit, and the third one puts a little angle in the side rod that ended up in the production locomotive. These next two items are 490s. They both have a switch on the top to activate and deactivate a bell. This one has both a bell and a chugger, and this other one has only a bell. And they have different ways for making the bell ding as the one-way electric motor went chugging down the track. Letters to Marx, asking him for parts, asking him for information, and they always came back signed by R.S. Keep. Even up and into the 1970s, R.S. Keep signed the letters that came back. I've got a copy of one of the letters here. The station, Keepville, is obviously named after Mr. Keep, who is hunkered over his desk in the station. It's a rheostat building, and it has a battery holder underneath. The Glenwood Dynor, I don't know how anybody misspelled Dynor, but I guess all the model makers didn't have dictionaries when they made the models. It's made out of a tender body. The next piece is a whistling station. Very early, 1941, they had a whistling station. Most of it's made out of the side dump, but it isn't all. We have a 1939 version of a tunnel. This is a much smaller tunnel than the production version that actually came about. And then in 1949, we had some early work on some plastic tunnel portals, which never made it into production. Mr. Marx killed the project, but they didn't throw anything away. It went into a drawer. This next shelf shows a couple water towers at the beginning. Here's a very early water tower with a weight to operate the spout. This wooden tower is the granddaddy of all of the Marx plastic water towers. Millions of plastic water towers have been out there. This is the very first one. It was made out of wood. The back side is actually held together with staples. Some of the pieces are broken. I've got them in a baggie here to save the broken pieces. And then we have a variety of signals and crossing gates, some of which look like things that made it into production. This signal has a completely different label on the front. That label is all hand painted. They were designing a much lower body for some of the switch motors and some of the uncoupling unit motors. We have a couple standpipes. And this signal is designed so that when it's set on stop, this ramp will stop the wind-up train when it's coming down the track. When you set it to go, the ramp pulls down to where the train can go by. Look at are not prototypes. These are regular production items, some from the factories in England and some from Girard. You have the Silver Link Streamliner, then we have a little Silver Street floor train. The two trolley cars, those are not mine. I hate to say it, I have never been able to find the trolley car with the light. And the Bunny Express is not mine either. That's a beautiful Bunny Express. And we had it running around the layout. The British Coronation Special. The wind-up 999, they took a 999 body, put a 66, the 666 is different. That's not a 999 turned upside down. It can't be. This was made as a wind-up engine, the control levers in the cab to turn it on and off. Version of the uncoupler for the lugging pincer cars. I've never seen one other than this, but it is in every way a production unit. The control unit labeling on there is lithographed, so there must be more of them. A lot of people don't know what the little hole is in the side of most of the Commodore Vanderbilts for, so we put this in the cabinet. That's a thumb screw like you'd have in a light fixture. It goes in and screws into the end of a battery to light the headlight on the wind-up locomotive. Then we have a body shell right out of the casting for the Marx HO gauge Hudson. It hasn't been trimmed at all yet, has the sprues still attached to it. And finally we have the red 994 locomotive with the red nickel plate tender. It's a production item, there just aren't very many of them. Well, I've also got some pictures that are up on the wall as I went through the factory. When I got a chance to do this, I was able to take a bunch of pictures. They had racks full of trains and transformers. They had equipment for winding the armatures of the motors, equipment for lettering the cars. This shows up close lettering of Lehigh Valley. Now I cheated on this one. The press was all set up for Lehigh Valley, but they lettered it before they put the handrails on. The handrails would not have been on there in the lettering process.